Apple. The name that strikes joy or hate in most. Apple used to be the number one force in the smartphone industry. There was even a time when every touchscreen phone was referred to as an iPhone by an uninformed public. It was huge, but in recent years, competition like Samsung, LG, HTC, and Sony, just to mention a few, have really overtaken the iPhone in capabilities and value. The drive for innovation seemed to slow down after the loss of its founder. This was evident in the latest release of the iPhone 5S and 5C. So if we just take a step back from all of this, we can ask ourselves the question, how did the iPhone get so popular in the first place? Let's find out. In 2000, Apple was still doing pretty badly, and they needed something to pick themselves up. Steve Jobs had been re-elected as CEO and had been back at the helm of the company since 1997. He was looking to enter the largely untapped market of digital portable music. It had been done before by other companies, but never well. He needed an outstanding idea that could not fail. This was Apple's last chance. It's a long story, but it actually turns out that the original brainchild for the iPod's design, and even iTunes' way of music distribution, can be traced back to the 1979 invention of the digital audio player by British inventor Kane Kramer. The iPod really came at the right time. It's actually said that Apple's board members were actually considering shutting down the company, closing doors, and selling Apple. But how did the iPod become so intensely popular? One area was its ease of use and navigation. Back in 2001, with most MP3 players, you had to manually click to each song, and if you had 1,000 songs, well, forget about it. But the scroll wheel changed all of that. The second reason to why the iPod was so popular? The headphones. Nobody was selling MP3 players, CD players, or Walkmans with white headphones. So each and every time a person walked down the street with these crazy white headphones that stood out from everything else, other people just had to ask, what is that? And that curiosity helped fuel the hype for the iPod. It was so successful that it went on to become one of the most culturally recognized items of the decade. When Apple finally acknowledged that Kane Kramer was the original brainchild, they gave him a free iPod. It stopped working 8 months later. The iPod took over the world and brought Apple back into the limelight for the first time in over a decade. The music industry had been conquered. The next target? The mobile phone. Do you remember Nokia? Of course you do. It wasn't long ago that Nokia was like the Nike, Coke, Mercedes, or BMW of the mobile phone industry. This was pretty much the way it always was. But on September 2nd, 2013, Nokia was bought by Microsoft for less than $8 billion. That's right, Nokia as a company does not exist anymore. The huge billion-dollar companies of yesteryear certainly aren't what they used to be. But how did this happen? In 2007, the world was looking for a brand new approach to the mobile phone. The start of the answer just needed a company to be at the right place at the right time with the right product.
I think we're going to hit a grand slam with this.
The new must-have device that takes the iPod even further.
No buttons on the front. You'll notice that's a key differentiator. All touchscreen.
Gadget fans will want one, but will it ever reach a wider market?
$100 fully subsidized with a plan. I said that is the most expensive phone in the world, and it doesn't appeal to business customers because it doesn't have a keyboard.
Whether you love the iPhone or you hate it, there's no denying that back then in 2007 when the iPhone was launched, it showed a sign of the way things would work from then on. Even though people hated the way Steve Jobs ran his company, people just had to hand it to him that this all-touchscreen slate phone was an interesting enough device, even though it cost $600 on a 2-year contract for the 8GB model. But it was really some good marketing and some little fine details that really made the iPhone sell like hotcakes.
Magic comes when you use your finger on that thing. You scroll lists like by flicking like this, and it's like a roulette wheel. It goes stop like that. It's just so cool.
If it wasn't for the breakthrough of the App Store, the iPhone could have just been one of those devices which just looked cool and was cool to use, but just didn't catch on. The App Store made all the difference.
What Apple marketed was that there were web apps. What would happen is you'd open Safari and you would go to a website that was designed for iPhone, and you could have HTML-based games and calendars and applications. Obviously, this didn't roll over well because Apple announced the App Store, but for the first year, there was no App Store.
It's amazing how many people actually forget. For one entire year after the iPhone's launch, it could run a grand total of 16 apps. That's right, there was only that one home screen of apps, and that was it. And this wasn't to mention how limited the iPhone was compared to some other devices out there. No MMS, no video camera, no cut and paste, the list goes on. Nokia or Nokia, BlackBerry, and the rest of the established phone companies had been doing that kind of thing for years. Just to give you an idea of how basic the iPhone's functionalities were back then, jailbreaking your iPhone only got you custom ringtones, and that's it. Of course, this ceased to be the case after the release of the App Store in 2008. For the first time, a device was a blank canvas, and the software creators could make the device be whatever they wanted it to be. Due to the iPod's huge success, there was a huge number of new generation Apple fans, and they just went crazy for this new iPhone. And of course that meant a big market, which meant that everyone wanted to write software and apps for it. For the first time in almost 2 decades, people were writing software for a brand new platform. Their creativity was only limited by the hardware. And as we all know, the rest is history. Today, billions of apps have been sold, and the mobile app space is pretty much a new industry. Companies like Nokia, BlackBerry, and Palm thought they knew the game, but they just couldn't see it. They couldn't visualize the future at all. They thought things would never change, and before they realized, it was too late. To prosper in the brave new world of the new mobile industry, a new way of thinking was needed. And one company that possessed that attribute? Google. Midway through the iPod storm, the beginnings of something earth-shattering was brought into the world. In 2003, Andy Rubin and Rich Mina founded a company in Palo Alto, California, named Android Incorporated. Android would play a major role in the late 2000s. The next few years became a blur as the modern world as we know today began to form. That was of course an extract from the Death of the PC Part 2 video. So if you want to see the full thing, don't forget to click that subscribe button. The full video should be finally coming next week. So thank you guys for your patience, and once again, don't forget to rate, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you again soon for another video. Cheers.